A reading from the book of Numbers. The children of Israel lamented, "Would that we had meat for food. We remember the fish we used to eat without cost in Egypt, and the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. But now we are famished. We see nothing before us but this manna." Manna was like coriander seed and had the color of resin. When they had gone about and gathered it up, the people would grind it between millstones or pound it in a mortar. Then cook it in a pot and make it into loaves, which tasted like cakes made with oil. At night, when the dew fell upon the camp, the manna also fell. When Moses heard the people, family after family, crying at the entrance of their tents, so that the Lord became very angry, he was grieved. "Why do you treat your servants so badly?" Moses asked the Lord. Why are you so displeased with me, that you burden me with all this people? Was it I who conceived all this people, or was it I who gave them birth, that you tell me to carry them at my bosom, like a foster father carrying an infant, to the land you have promised under oath to their fathers? Where can I get meat to give to all this people? For they are crying to me, "Give us meat for our food." I cannot carry all this people by myself, for they are too heavy for me. If this is the way you will deal with me, then please do me the favor of killing me at once, so that I need no longer face this distress. The word of the Lord. Sing with joy to God our help. My people heard not my voice, and Israel obeyed me not. So I gave them up to the hardness of their hearts. They walked according to their own counsels. If only my people would hear me, and Israel walk in my ways. Quickly would I humble their enemies. Against their foes I would turn my hand. Those who hated the Lord would seek to flatter me, but their fate would endure forever. While Israel I would feed with the best of wheat, and with honey from the rock I would fill them.
One does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes forth from the mouth of God. Hallelujah. 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 The Lord be with you. Reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew. When Jesus heard of the death of John the Baptist, he withdrew in a boat to a deserted place by himself. The crowds heard of this and followed him on foot from their towns. When he disembarked and saw the vast crowd, his heart was moved with pity for them, and he cured their sick. When it was evening, the disciples approached him and said, "This is a deserted place, and it is already late. Dismiss the crowd so that they can go to the villages and buy food for themselves." He said to them, "There is no need for them to go away. give them some food yourselves." But they said to him, "5 loaves and 2 fish are all we have here." Then he said, "Bring them here to me." And he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he said a blessing, broke the loaves, and gave them to the disciples, who in turn gave them to the crowds. They all ate and were satisfied, and they picked up the fragments left over, 12 wicker baskets full. Those who ate were about 5,000 men, not counting women and children. The Gospel of the Lord. Good morning. I just would like to repeat the last line here in our Gospel. Those who ate were about 5,000 men. And I think the Lord will only feed men, not counting women and children. So sorry to you, women, you're not counted. But I think it gives us also the value of family, like the census before, like the counting. How do they count? It's not by individual, but by family. And man or husband or the father symbolizes for the whole member of the family. That's why it's not only like times 3 or times 4, but it depends on the number, the typical number of the family. It's not only 5,000, but a lot of people fed by the Lord. Anyhow, it's also good to note the first reading that we have, the story of the Israelites from the slavery in Egypt. And I think there is a parallelism also, like the manna from heaven, and God also, like we receive communion, and the Lord comes from heaven, like the Lord is feeding us. But then our Gospel today tells us more about this one, the feeding of the Lord. And it's not just those people, but we can tell and we believe that until now, the Lord is feeding His people. Like He is our King. He Himself is the one ruling us, and He Himself is the one feeding His people up to our time. But then in our Gospel today, we'll try to see why was the Lord did the feeding of the people. It says here, the Lord was moved with pity for them. Like He fed the people because He saw them and He was moved with pity. Like His heart was moved with pity for them. And we have known that the Lord is merciful and compassionate. That's why it's just easy for His heart to be moved with pity. Like looking at them. No, you don't need to ask them to go. We will feed them. And I think the feeding here of the 5,000 or the people here, this happened. The gospel started with when after the death of John the Baptist. Probably the Lord was sad because of that death of John the Baptist. But then He remains to be compassionate. Even though when He was sad because of the death of John the Baptist, but He remains to be compassionate and merciful and still capable to do something for the people, not to be for the reason of being sad, but capable to do everything for the people. Well, the feeding comes from the mercy of the Lord, and His heart was moved with pity. And the feeding then is not just like physical feeding, but something more. Like the feeding of the Lord is not just like to fill up the stomach, but also like even the heart and even the mind and the whole thing. And it gives us something like hunger is not just about physical hunger, but there's also like intellectual hunger, to know what is good, so that we are directed with our faith. Emotional hunger. You only do not feel the thing for you, but we also feel the sufferings of others. And that's the emotional hunger. And even like, for example, the hunger about God, hunger about being one, about being in communion with everyone. And is it not also like in the Eucharist, the feeding of the Lord? Is it not also coming from His mercy? Because He was moved with pity, and even until now, like the feeding was not just that feeding, but even in the Eucharist, and comes from heaven, the manna. And is it not also like feeding not just the stomach, but also the heart, the mind, and everything that we long about Him? And so in these days to reflect about the bread of life, we'll pray for this, and that we hunger more, not just about the food in the earth, but also about the feeding of the Lord in us.